Use the audio coming out from this. Okay.
All right.
All good. Hey, as long as you can hear me and it's clear and the video works and
Yeah. I am just checking to make sure we go live on YouTube here in a moment. I can hear you fine. I just need to make sure that the audio works.
well, yeah. I mean, well, if you're saying you can hear me, then that's
yeah.
Well, because I can switch audio. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I think you sound pretty fine. You sound okay.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm loud enough and clear. Is it dark? Do I need to add more light? Well, if you're saying you can hear me.
Okay, so I'm getting audio from Restream, which is good. Can you go ahead and talk real quick?
I can switch audio. I can talk. Can you hear me?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, yep. I think you sound pretty fine. You sound okay. Perfect. Looks like we have audio. We are all set. Hello. Oh, hi, James. Oh, an error occurred. Why? Looks like the YouTube stream caught an error. Streaming. Everything is streaming. Looks like we have a watcher on Facebook. Wonderful. Hello. Looks like we are getting a call from a LinkedIn user. So we're live on LinkedIn now. So this is good. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for helping me out. All right. So we have LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. This is the first time I've ever done something like this. That's so cool. Like 4, maybe 5 stages, and it was such an easy inclusion. So I guess we should probably get started. How are you, Adrian?
I'm fine. How's the lighting look? Do I look like I'm getting baked?
Getting baked? I probably look like I do, if I'm honest, because I have like a window hitting me, and then I have like everything else. I think you're probably okay.
I'm trying to get the lighting right.
Yeah. All right, and I'm able to switch. Like, technology, it's so fun. Yeah, you look good. Christmas shirt even?
Yeah, well, it's a holiday shirt, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Fair enough, very true.
And what I love about this camera is I'm able to insert that little card there, although for me it looks backwards, so as long as it doesn't look backwards to you, then...
Nope, looks good. I mean, I would rep that head of community at Higher Logic badge as much as you possibly can. That's just incredible.
Well, I was debating, like, what should I put there? But it's like, it seems a bit egomaniac to put, like, published author and...
I mean, like, it's also like your victory tour for your book. I kind of feel like you're allowed.
Well, what's funny with this, what I'm using is a Mevo camera, and what I'm able to do is I would be able to put, like, the book, like, in the corner the whole time I'm talking.
Oh, yeah.
That's too much.
I mean, fair enough. What system are you using to do that, if you don't mind me asking?
So it's called a Mevo Star, M-E-V-O.
Okay.
And it's a fantastic camera. I could zoom, I can pan, all with one camera, but obviously I'm situated here. But if we were in person... What I would be able to do is put it in person and have, go back and forth and zoom in and pan. I can even turn it to, like, follow my body movements, but, like, I don't need to go crazy.
What system? Woo. I just discovered that there's a keyboard shortcut for unmuting your stream. Good to know.
Here, let me just put everything in mute so we're not disturbed.
Yeah, no worries. I should probably also close Mattermost and Slack. If you're joining me from Discord, you can also just join in the Discord community channel. You can actually hop into the main chat room. It is not locked for VIPs, and you can actually join us on stream if that's something that you're interested in doing, and then we can ask questions and whatnot. Before we do get started, I also want to say thank you so much to those who are watching. I was slightly worried because I made a mistake, as all community managers do, and we'll talk about this a lot in the future. But I forgot to pay for my social media platform, and as a result, it didn't publish any of the socials. So thank you for being here.
I I mean, listen, I mean, to unveil a bit of the behind the scenes as well, it's like last minute I kind of realized, oh, Discord isn't something I can install on my work computer.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm using my home computer, and I've rigged everything up, and we're like, hey, is Zoom going to be a problem? And it's kind of like a last minute scramble, but hey, we made it work.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So we'll kind of get started as people kind of trickle in. I also want to let you all know this is a part of the Information Diet Book Club. So this is something that we do once per month. We are taking the month of December off. So this is actually the last book in the last event for the Information Diet Book Club. And I'm so, so happy that it was this book. It felt so important for me to be reading this at the beginning of like my first year with socially constructed online. Like I became a consultant and I'm like, yeah, I know so much about community. It's time for me to step up to the stage, time for me to have this voice, become a community consultant and a community architect. And suddenly everything that I knew about community just goes out the window because I'm going, oh, this is a completely new area of online community. So having read this book was so important for me to like return to the basics. And I felt like this emotional contention over the course of the past year building my business that really felt like it needed words. And I think that's the most important impact that I had for this book is that it gave words to emotions, feelings, and fears of joining into this industry. So would you be willing to introduce us to this book and talk a little bit about those emotional fears and the reason why you chose to speak to people at the very beginning of their community careers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I have a very unique role or position that gave me a point of view that I guess a lot of people wouldn't have. So briefly, I work at Higher Logic, which is a vendor of community software. And so, we're working with hundreds of individuals, and I always found it interesting how whenever I would start talking to someone, they would always say, oh, I was a teacher before, or I was a drama student, or I have a degree in biology, or some weird thing. And it didn't want to discount people that were saying, oh, I've kind of fallen into this, but it kind of got almost a running joke in my head in the sense that there wasn't anyone really going to school and studying and becoming a community manager. And so it was like, man, there wasn't really a resource I felt that I could send people to that kind of spoke to that kind of falling into it. A lot of the resources are really good books. I'm not taking away from any of them, like Jono and Carrie Melissa Jones and Richard Millington and all of them have put out really great and important works, and I stand on the shoulders of giants in that sense. But what I found was I didn't have something that I felt I could kind of say, hey, welcome to the club, and here's the mistakes that I've made, and kind of give it a first person feel about it. I found that what was the challenge in some of the other ones was more like interviews of others, and it didn't really get to that personal aspect, which is what I really wanted to do. I wanted to have a book that was very personal, and on top of that, I had in my mind this really scared 20-year-old who had his first paying community gig, who kind of just fell into it, who up to that point had just done kind of hobby communities and was now kind of taking the like I talk about it like it's one thing if you have like a beat up Honda, and it's a whole other thing if someone gives you like keys to a Ferrari and says, hey, don't screw it up.
Yeah.
So it's like one thing you have like a Discord or a Slack for your friends, and it's a whole other thing when you've got a $7 billion company saying, hey, go run our technical community with all these engineers and don't mess up.
Yeah.
And I felt there wasn't really a story that kind of was saying to people, hey, like we all make mistakes, and here's some of the things that I've learned, because I could take from different points. Because the thing is, if you're one community manager, you're going to be focused on that one community story that you had in your lifetime.
Yeah.
I've worked with over 1,000.
Real quick, I do apologize. We actually just got a message asking for you to increase your volume.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I can do that.
Yeah.
Is that better, folks?
We will see. Let us know, James, if that's actually better for you in the comments. But otherwise, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to make sure that the audio is good because it would be a shame if.
Oh,
So
he
if
says
anyone could give
perfect.
a
Thank
thumbs
you.
up. Yeah, I cranked the gain all the way up, but I also don't want to be screaming. I was as an example, my friend Nicole Davilites, she was like, she read the book, the first draft, and she's like, I love it. But she's like, well, what about private communities? You haven't talked about them. Like not everyone's going to have a public community and be able to benefit from SEO. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. So I gotta write something about that. So that chapter was added, and then as time wore on into the book, and I think I've talked about this in other places, like the DEIB chapter. I was like, well, I have to include this because um, if this is going to be people's onboarding into a community, and yes, I mean, I have challenges, obviously being, of a certain class and very privileged, but I still think it needs to be uh, talked about. And I was really, really careful with that chapter to make sure that I talked to various numbers of folks that I know, just to make sure that I at least was giving at least the basics to get started and have the thought process there so that those things were being considered. I by no means am setting myself up as an expert in DEIB, but it's certainly something that I consider. And you want to make communities that are open and equitable, and um, I wanted to make sure that at least I had touched a bit of it, so that if when you're building your community, you're thinking of it, and then you have somewhere to go and continue your learning journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm terribly sorry. It looks like we do have that audio issue fixed right now. Terribly sorry about that. But if there are any audio issues or anything like that moving forward, I do apologize. I'm using a new software. It seems to be working, but it's really fun. I kind of feel like that I'm kind of living the issue that you had in the book, where like testing, is this thing on, like you had an entire chapter all about like, but what if it doesn't work, and the importance of soft launches and stuff like that.
Listen, I did a live webinar once where the building went on fire. I mean, it happens. Things happen. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not. You're gonna get judged more on your reaction than anything, and you gotta just roll with the punches and control what you can control. Like
Yeah.
I think everyone always gets nervous on, like, everyone knows, things happen, right?
Yeah.
And it's all just a learning, and you do the best you can.
Hi. Masafumi, it looks like your audio is coming through with the translation. Go ahead and mute you. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. We're getting there. We're getting there. It's happening. But yeah, I kind of related to that chapter. A really, really good question, because I know that there are some cases when this happens very frequently. A new community manager will be pushed to build things, get it out, get it done, get it taken care of as fast as possible. And oftentimes they're not given the discussion skills or the discussion chops in community management training, because we focus so much on how to build the community that we don't really discuss how to have these discussions with your stakeholders and how to step into the power required to be in this role. So they end up making things. They know they have to make concessions. Which hills do I want to die on? And then when it comes point to launch, they get crickets. And then they have to go back and they have to say, well, we don't know what happened because we didn't do the thing by the book. What advice do you have for them when a lot of these failings had occurred in their community? And how do you think the book speaks to that experience?
Well, in terms of the things not going your way,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I think the important thing is knowing that the thing that I always look forward towards in life, and I think I talked about this in the book, is try to keep making new mistakes. The mistakes are going to happen, and it's about learning from them and getting the essence of it. I spend a lot of time reflecting in a journal daily that I keep, and so I try not to make the same mistakes in that sense. And I think that some of the things in the book may not work. Some of it may work, and you got to try, because every community is so different in the way that it approaches. But we're human, and I think my main hope is that people understand that I got to this spot by making a lot of mistakes, and most people have. Like that's just the reality of it. But it's not so much the mistakes that you make, but how you respond to it and how you learn and move forward.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I made a lot of mistakes early in my career, so not major ones. So I was able to kind of learn um, very quickly about them. And now sometimes it's hard to deal with it, but I think what's really nice in general, I found that the community of community builders is very open and willing to share. And I think that if you reach out to folks and talk with them, they'll tell you.
Hmm.
Everyone has made mistakes. There are, I mean, countless. I mean,
Yeah.
you should hear some of the stories that I heard. They're not my stories to share, but I mean, you can scratch a bit and ask anyone that's been doing this any length of time, and they can tell you all kinds of errors that they've made,
Yeah.
mistakes that they've made, and it's the learning. You just learn, and I try to include as many mistakes as I could in the book. But I always say there's two types of people in the world. There's those that if you tell them the stove is hot, they keep their hands off and say, okay, I don't want to burn my hands. And there's just some that even if you tell them it's hot, they just got to burn their fingers to learn their lesson.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and, I fall onto the if you tell me the stove's hot, I'm not going to burn my hands. Thank you, I appreciate it. I will not touch the stove.
Yeah.
But there's other people, and I've worked with them too, that just were like, they don't care. They gotta burn their hands for themselves.
Yeah. One of the rules of thumb that I tend to work with, because, like, especially as a beginning community manager and as a beginner in social media or in marketing, you just got to try and you just got to test things. And sometimes people just need to learn that way. And I have found that when you kind of humble yourself and recognize that something is a misstep, so you can say it two, maybe three times, but ultimately, if they genuinely believe that this is the right step to take, let them try it. Like, just say after that third time, all right, let's do it. And then just do your best to execute on it and see if it does work. That's a time for you to retest an assumption that you had previously in your career.
Yeah, I mean, it happens sometimes, right? There's things that didn't work, and sometimes you're early.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not the right time. I can even think of there's like a lot of businesses that have passed through and are no longer around that they were like 5 years too early.
Yeah. Vine is a
You
good
know?
example.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think of this. There was this really great startup in the I think it was the early 2000s. It was like Findery, which is this great aggregation of basically news, and based on what you read and interest, it would kind of surface other articles of interest to you, and it was really well done.
Mhm.
But it was like 5 years too early, and now that's kind of like the standard of how things are done. But a lot of the work he had done, it just was he was just too early to it. And there's times too. Like I can say that I've tried stuff and it was like, it didn't work, and well, we'll try it again, or we'll tweak it, and then it works. And there's some things that just won't work regardless. Like um, but I mean that's why it's very hard to be very prescriptive on any community. It always starts with that caveat of, well, it depends. And I mean, every community manager should have that as a T-shirt.
Yeah, agreed. I like what David is saying here. Nobody remembers the first MP3 player, they remember the iPod. Um, I think it's important, like testing and iteration and development across a lot of communities. Um, you can make mistakes and they'll just kind of fall into the ether because when it's successful, that is the thing people start to remember. And that also contests with this other adage, of like in support, negative feedback, it's 10 times more likely to go viral than positive feedback. But if you genuinely just keep trying to test and you maintain authenticity and say, hey, look, this is a test, y'all, just so you know, and have that transparency, that authenticity, and that trust, I think that a lot of beginning community managers will find that it's a lot more lenient than they like to think it is.
And just to jump on David's comment there, not in any negative way, but before the MP3 player was a Sony mini disc player. Like there was an in between where we went from the CD to the Sony mini disc to the MP3, right? And that Sony mini disc was, kind of forgotten, but sadly I own one, so I definitely know it exists. But it's a relic to history.
Yeah.
And you're right, right? Like those half step measures, and that's why I'm also a big fan of people writing down all these ideas, and having that like a list that they can go back to. And hey, you know what? Maybe that an iteration, or maybe technology advances, or maybe there's a resource internally that you didn't have before. Like when I first started with Vanilla in 2013, like my budget was very, very small.
Mm.
Um, and over time, as we grew as a company, I had money to go back and look at ideas that I had to pass on, or events that I couldn't partake in because we just didn't have the money. And there are other things that worked out really well.
Yeah.
Like I remember like early on, like I spoke to David Spinks about CMX. Like I was in 2013. I'm like, David, we're too small. But then in 2014, we had the money, and it was like the event that we went to. So in 2014, I was in the basement of the Brooklyn Bolodrome, whatever it was called there, with a one stand banner, and people were coming up, hey, what's Vanilla? And I spent my whole time just explaining what Vanilla Forums was.
Yeah.
And look how times change, right?
Yeah, definitely. Um, Kind of taking a brief interlude, I'd like to know what about the organic communities that were formed as a result of Vanilla as a bulletin board style system that transitioned into a mainline new forum system. Vanilla kind of has a place in SaaS software for the history of online community. What elements of your work building Vanilla from small company to its acquisition at Higher Logic really forged your experiences in the book?
Wow. That's a great question. I think the difference ended up being is over time, the scale to which the customers that I ended up dealing with. So early on, we were very, I'll even remember this, like there would be a time where people would fill in forms for a demo. And I remember one of the salespersons called, and the person answered the phone, oh, my son's not home right now. He's at school, but I'll have him call you back. And that was when a long time ago, Vanilla was like $19 a month for the SaaS product.
That's
And
crazy.
uh, yeah, and believe it or not, there's some customers still grandfathered in at very low prices from back in the day. Like we never gave them increases, but over time, the size of the customer changed, right? So it went from dealing with a mom and pop heating company, for example, to Adobe and EA and Qualtrics and these household names. Like I remember, like when I first started, and it was kind of funny. Like the CEO at the time when I first got hired was trying to hey, we've got these really great brands, and I was kind of like I didn't know any of them, or like I knew like one of them.
Yeah.
But I could say like now, if I name just five or six ones that we're dealing with, like everyone knows like 1Password or Smartsheet or Expensify, or like these are all customers that I get a chance to talk with and learn from, and share, and so that perspective just kind of infused in the book of all the different aspects in it, or stories that people told me that I maybe changed a bit of the facts just to hide the innocence, as they say. But enough of that, like kind of the story I told about where I was at a lunch, and they told me, oh, we'll never be on your platform, and they ended up getting onto our platform, and they had really good success with their career. I talk about another customer there, about the difference between German and Japanese, and the challenges they had about taking a local slang speaker versus taking someone who was a native speaker, and how that had an impact on the way the community reacted to things. So it all informed those kinds of scenarios, and I was also very thankful because there's a lot, like Span and Cargo and MVP and all that stuff was created during employment while at higher, at Vanilla. But they were very generous to allow me to publish the book with that in there.
Yeah. And just for everyone else, the MVP, cargo, and span models are, I would say, like the core to the book. It's a very simple fleshed out way to identify what kind of community you're operating, who the people you're actually talking to are, and the span model is essentially what is the process that you're going to have for building the online community, right? Can you go a little bit more into that?
Yeah, so the MVP principle to me is the cornerstone, although it kind of gets forgotten in I guess in the beauty of the triumvirate of things. But the MVP principle is basically most valuable person, and it looks at the balance between stakeholder and the people that are coming to the community. And I see that what usually ends up happening where communities go out of bounds or fail or people end up having trouble is there's an imbalance that occurs. So I wanted to address that there's a need to kind of find that balance between the two.
Yeah.
Then talking about span is essentially within B2B communities, we've kind of felt that they fell into four quadrants, which was support, product, ambassador, networking. And the idea was really to get people to focus on one of these areas because I found what happened is, especially with new community managers, and this is why it was written from the new community manager with launch, is people come in, they want to do all the things all at once. And it's kind of like that overwhelming rush, right? Like, oh, we got to do product, we got to do support. It's like, okay, you're one person. Like, where is the opportunity for the most beneficial area to move forward? And then cargo is kind of where you select your span and then you build your cargo framework. It's basically five elements or five questions you need to consider in order to build your community effectively. And that starts with concept, how you're going to acquire people, how you're going to retain them, your goals and your outcomes. And it's all part of the balance that goes to that span that you took. Because what I found what people were doing or what would happen is someone would say, we're going to create this really amazing support community for our customers. So they had or whatever that concept was, right? Like it was very defined but it was very support minded. But then they would get to goals, and the goals would be all these weird marketing metrics or revenue metrics that had nothing to do with support. So I was like, well, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. And I found that those misalignments would then be to the detriment, and communities would fail because there wasn't an understanding across the organization. And the thing that I liked about Cargo and how it's been used is that one sheet summary is kind of your way to quickly say, okay, are we all aligned within the organization? Are we doing the right things to be successful? And it gives us an opportunity as well on a quarterly, yearly basis to look back and say, okay, are we still going in the right direction? Or do we need to make adjustments or changes? Or if a new executive comes in, there's a way to kind of quickly make an assessment and decide how do we want to move forward. And that to me was the most important thing with that aspect.
Yeah. And I really like that the models are grounded. And like you said, they can be accomplished on one page. One of the things that came up to me though is because you use span, cargo, and MVP especially, throughout the course of the book to contextualize your advice. One of the major things that you said before, and if I remember correctly, I actually put it down as a quote, if I can find it here. The difference between building what I call a champion community versus a influencer community. There's a very, very big difference between building programs to prize your super users versus building programs to prize your influencers and your vendor contributors. One of the things that really struck me about that was, as a beginner, that's just one of those small little nuances that doesn't really get caught by a beginning community manager where they're like, I need to build the program for these two special audiences. But once you apply MVP and you're like, who are the people we're servicing? Let's go ask them what they want or what they need. And in all actuality, like, you're elevating your super users to an influencer status, but that doesn't mean it's an influencer community. Can you clarify that a bit?
Yeah, so I think the challenge that I had was, and to your point, earlier about how things got influenced, was having so many conversations. A lot of times these questions just would come up, and I would have to talk about it. And so what I came to understand, or would share as advice, is the difference between an influencer and a super user is about the passion and reason that they're there. Super users tend to be, it's organic, right? You're a super user because you care about the product, or you become an expert and you really care and have an investment in the company or in the product or in the service or what, like you're really tied. Influencers, not to say that they don't care, but the difference is it's more about an industry or um, an approach to it, and much I'm much more intrigued when people look at it from what are the where are you currently situated in terms of relation of how things are working with your community? Because as you pointed out, is it you answering all the questions? Is it the community answering most of the questions? Do you have executive buy-in, or are you just starting out completely from scratch? And depending on where you are, that's how you're going to make the decision of the cargo. And that's the whole thing. All these elements are all important, but cohesively together is a system that works together. And that's kind of um, I know it's a bit complex, but that's just the nature of how it goes. So that's kind of how I see it from that point of view. Is if you're new and brand new to starting complete from scratch with an introduction aspect, right? Well, then you're looking at your acquisition aspect is going to be the most important, right? Like, how are we going to tell people that this even exists, that we're out there? And then our goal should be acquisition focused, because we're not going to have the traditional ROI that maybe a more mature community would have. Although there's always ROI, it's just a matter of how we define it and how we bring it back.
Yeah.
Um, but I was talking with someone the other day about this. I always get nervous when people tell me that, oh, there you can't have ROI in a community. It takes like 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
There's ROI. It maybe not be the way that it gets traditionally defined or how your company necessarily wants it, but there are things that are happening. There is value. There is return on investment. It's about figuring out how to report that and share those stories and show that there's momentum and things that are happening. Because if you go and tell someone that there's not going to be a return on investment in a year, for a year, I would prepare your resume.
Yeah, agreed. And I think you said that both on the community hour and also Deb Shell's community podcast, where you
I
were
really believe it
talking.
because I mean I've been hearing so many people say, "Oh yeah, well you got to wait 6 to 12 months before you see ROI," but it's not true.
Yeah, Exactly. And for all of the viewers, if you're on Facebook, Twitter, or in the Discord yourself, I've gone ahead and pasted a link to a playlist that is like the ultimate victory lap for Adrian, because like this conversation is coming at the end of quite a few events with a ton of amazing advice. So we've gone ahead and pasted that. But kind of getting back into it, I absolutely agree with you. I think that the metrics discussion, the metrics conversation for a community is just like for an expert. It's a muscle, and it's not a muscle that one individual, the community manager, is responsible for growing, right? You have very, very simple metrics to start with as a community manager. What are you personally used to as you move forward with your career? But even as an expert in metrics, in development, in online community health, when I get a client that isn't familiar with a lot of these metrics, I also start simple because for the community, measurement is a muscle as well, you know?
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is I was talking with a consultant the other day about this. Um, there, a lot of community builders are really extroverts online, but in person, for whatever reason, there's a lot that are introverts. But it's something that we you have to work on. You know, it's one of those like skills. You know, sadly, it's just one of those things. And where I'm going with this is that you cannot be in your silo. You have to reach out. And I don't care the size of every company that I've worked at and every company I've worked with always has someone that's doing the analytics. Always. There's always someone that's looking at the analytics. So if you're not comfortable with numbers or figuring something out, there is going to be someone in the company, usually in the marketing department, who's looking at this, and you can have a conversation with them and say, look, we have this community. Can you help me figure out the influence this community is having on our digital ecosystem? There's so many times I'll find out someone's not even the pure basic, which is adding the Google Analytics or their analytics code to the community so it gets measured within the total ecosystem. That's like base one, because all that ends ahead, someone clicks a link and goes to the website and then buys, that's a referral. You know, if you're able to even just give the simple like 33% of the traffic from our to our main website came from the community, which came from Google. Like just being able to report that is ROI. You know what I mean? And I think that's the weird thing that we get into about like, oh, I need to have like this crazy formula and figure out all these. That comes later, but all that's doable. So like, I always find it strange where people are like, oh, well, you know, it's hard to measure and this and that. Like, I trust me. I worked at an analytics company. Everything can be measured. The important thing is measuring the right things. It's working with someone that understands it within the total aspect. And if you're working with these analytics folks, they can also probably give you some ideas of, well, here's what we're measuring, and here's how we can input community into it. We shouldn't be afraid to have those conversations. Although I know it's difficult, you know, because like I said, the introvert in us wants to just, I know I'm going to do my community work, and I don't want to bother anyone. But you know, sadly, I think a lot of that ends up happening. I think you probably heard me say this somewhere else, is that part of my goal with Cargo and Span and all the book in general is to really advocate for us to stand up as a community of community builders and make community building as a role so essential that if a community builder is quits or there's an empty seat, it doesn't become, oh, we'll just slot in the marketing manager and figure it out and hobble along. Because I can tell you, at any company, like if a marketing manager steps down or a product manager steps down, right, it's like, oh my God, like we need to fill this, like get that filled out. There's so many times I've seen, you know, countless times. I mean, I would have seriously, I would own an island that I've seen a community manager leave or something happen, and they just like the community hobbles on for like a year. They don't actually hire anyone. They kind of just stopgap it and kind of hope that it. And I want to change that. I want it to be like we're doing such a great job of showing the value that the community brings that they say, oh my God, we need to get someone in this spot so badly. Like let's, you know, hire a recruiter. Let's, you know, make sure we get that job posting and being really clear in it. And I find, you know, we still haven't gotten there yet, but I'm hoping, you know, as community starts to get a bit more understanding out there, because, you know, I think we're starting to see the customer success engine start to understand the value of community, especially because customer success is a very labor intensive role in the sense of that you have more customers, you throw more humans at it. And they're kind of going, wait a second, we need to find more economical, smarter ways to think about customer experience and customer success. And community has been coming up more and more as a solution in that. Um, and so that I think is kind of the future of that experience customer success element and bringing in community into that thing that, community is going to be that, pillar, I hope. I see it coming. Um, but that's my goal with the book and kind of all the talking that I'm doing. Hopefully, right now it's in our echo chamber of the community builders, but I've started to notice that people that aren't in the community space have picked up the book and read it and have given me really great feedback and commentary. And I'm hoping that'll continue as we build out. But everyone listening and will hear this or out there is an ambassador to push it forward and in their companies and be able to show the value community is bringing so that um, we become almost essential to the organization. And we can only do that by showing the ROI and impact our community work is having.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And I think it also speaks to a somewhat tectonic shift. I was actually speaking with James Cattell, who's currently in the audience. We had this session where we were talking about what job roles and job positions are going to look like for the future of online community. How do we build a business case for online community that doesn't have beginning level community managers wearing all the hats and being expected to know and do all of the things and yet not have enough clarity in their role to receive the training and also fight for the compensation amount that comes with doing more complex behaviors? For instance, and I do think it's kind of funny because it is called the accidental community manager, right? But people are starting to push against the title of a community manager and saying we need to be more specific with our language in saying I'm a community builder and a community manager. And the aspect of community that I manage is community event engagement, community coordination, community facilitation, community architecture. What do you think is going to happen in the next few years as we start to step into these more specific community roles and fight for those positions?
Yeah, so I think, and I've been on record on this, so I'm not saying anything new that no one's ever heard before, but I don't believe the chief community officer, which I know some have advocated for, is really the best route forward. What we want is community to be understood as the ultimate experience for customers and align ourselves in the customer success experience aspect that it becomes just a natural part of it in the sense that it's community experience roles or community experience manager or something of this nature. And that we're looking at how people are onboarded and how they find out about our product and how those conversations go and having the backing of the company to say, oh my God, like the first experience that someone's going to have with us is going to be the community. Because like let's take anything that I don't know if you've bought anything recently, but anything that you bought recently, I'm sure always goes the same way. You think of the product or you have a problem, you go on Google, you do a search, you think you found something, then what do? You watch some YouTube videos, right? You do some Google searches about the brand, you end up maybe in a forum, right? About questions that people are asking, you want to see how the brand is responding, what are the problems that people are having? Usually you probably do like a product name scam, product name problems, product name bugs, product name feedback, product name review, that kind of stuff, right? And you start to read and gather all that information. So the companies that are thinking about, okay, where do we want people to land we when they do those searches? So the online reputation management and that thought, and how community can play a part of that is kind of where I see the future going in the sense that we're going to be able to bring value is having an understanding and empathy on how to respond to customers and engage with them and create this really um, sense of belonging and connection, and that levels up into the experience bubble.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge that we have right now I think the last time I saw, I think 30% of community builders are in marketing. And I think that's not that it's a bad thing. Like I came up from marketing, but the problem with marketing in general is the metrics to which marketing gets measured aren't necessarily about feeling good about a brand. It's, you know, it's about leads and it's about awareness and it's about brand affinity and yeah, I mean, there's advocacy, obviously, that's part of it, but customer experience is really honing in on like people feeling good about a brand and wanting to tell others about it and
Yeah.
ease of use and finding value and things of this nature. So I think that aligning in that way and thinking of it in this way is probably the future of where community is going.
Right. I definitely agree. And terribly sorry about that for the rest of the audience, but I've actually just been informed that we're about 10 minutes out from a amazing event with Bree Lever. I said I would go ahead and drop the link here for you to kind of follow up with that because that's where I'm going to be going next. But that also tells us that we only have about 10 minutes left. So if you're in the audience, I would absolutely love to answer any questions that you might have here on the air with while Adrian is currently here. In the meantime, though, you mentioned SEO and you mentioned connection. I wanted to have one big clarification in the book because I've been present for a lot of your interviews, and this question has been asked in virtually all of them about the importance and criticality of SEO in online communities and the way that it needs to change for community SEO to matter. One of the critical questions was for locked, gated communities, communities that don't want to be present on SEO, are the aspects and the tips for SEO for community still critical and important for them to know?
So that's why I wrote the chapter specifically in response to it because I had a friend of mine who was like, "Thanks for all the SEO stuff, but I don't have an open community." They actually worked at Nicole, which is not a surprise. She works at a security company, and at the time she was at SecureAuth. They closed community. I'm like, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that, and so that chapter kind of addresses it. And but I what I would say is this: SEO is such an important aspect in terms of success of a community that I would it's not that I'm saying that you necessarily have to have everything open, but be very conscious of it's kind of like ungated content versus gated content, which is always a raging debate.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is this, not everything needs to be secure and private.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if people are having conversations around your brand and are looking for information, where do you want them to go? And so my argument has always been, okay, I understand if you have a secure um, product and you don't want a conversation necessarily maybe about bugs or you know feature requests or things of this nature that your competitors could maybe glom onto, which they could probably find that information out anyways because people are out there asking or talking. But I mean, how about a consideration of an industry section, or you know, how are you creating the interest that people want to join? Like, what's the value in it? Because there's so many times what I find is that people will say, "Oh, we get a small percentage of our users are actually in the community." Well, I'm not really surprised because you haven't. There's no way for them to know the value of why I should even create an account and what's inside.
Right.
And there was a story I don't know if I told in the book, but it happened to me where there was a customer I was dealing with and um, I was preparing for the call with them and I was like, oh man, their community sucks. There's nothing going on here. It's empty. It's sparse. It's kind of like there's no reason for me to join. And I joined the call and I'm like, yeah, I can see why you have problems. Like there's nothing going on in this community. And they're like, what do you mean? There's like tons of stuff, tons of content. And I'm like, I don't see it.
Yeah.
And then they shared, so I shared my screen and it was like a ghost town, right? It looked horrible. And then they're like, oh, let me share my screen. And then they shared their screen and it had all this great content and videos and experts. And I was like, well, some of this stuff, I don't understand why it's gated.
Yeah.
And also, as someone coming to visit, like, I don't know that all this stuff's here. So I'm not seeing the value of it. I mean, if you tell me, it's kind of like falls on deaf ears. Like, hey, like think about it, right? Like, hey, join the community and see blah 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 blah. But I mean, if I click the link and I go right to a login, it's like, eh.
Hmm.
But if you were to like go and get, even if it's just a portion of it, that's what I'm saying. Like, I find it funny that the whole community needs to be shut down. It's not true. There's always going to be, even if it's a pre-sales conversation, there's always going to be an aspect that you want to have public. It's
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's like thinking about it this way: would you put out a blog that no one could read unless they signed in
Yeah.
for a product? Like, it's kind of weird. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm
Or
finding,
like Twitter. Like, do you hide? I mean, I know everyone's Twitter's a dumpster fire, but I mean, it's kind of strange that would any brand do a private Twitter or a private Facebook? It's strange. Like,
yeah, which I find
you live in
interesting
your phone.
given the movement to Mastodon, which is effectively like the things that made Twitter successful, Mastodon is not good at because Mastodon is supposed to be a private server system that is supposed to be lossless and secure and controlled, whereas Twitter is supposed to be this larger community setup where people are supposed to be able to talk to one another. But
We could probably go hours on just alone, but
yeah,
I mean that's just what my concern is that people are applying different rules to community than they do to every other aspect of it. And
yeah,
like, I would rather have a customer that I could recognize and has a single sign-on asking a question or coming to me to get a valid answer than some random anonymous guy on Reddit. Like, I don't know. It's just weird to me.
yeah, I agree, definitely. We only have about 5 minutes, officially speaking, left. So I'd kind of like to take this time because it is the holidays, right? And the way that I tend to view it professionally is November is a time to look back. December is a time to be present in your life and think about life design. And then January is a time to start looking forward. So for November, looking back on the past year, you launched a book. Higher Logic has been very successful. What is one failing that you've learned from this year? And what is one success that you're very proud of?
Oh, wow. Um, well, I mean, certainly the success for me, I'm very happy the book got out because that felt like it was never going to happen. It took 4 years to get here. So,
Yeah.
um, that to me is um, something that's no one will ever understand how special it is to me that this book actually got to the point that it did. Because I really, the most anxious aspect of it is you finish the manuscript and how do you get it um, to that final form that it's in people's hands.
Yeah.
Um, and then failure. I'm just trying to think of one it's like I can talk about publicly.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But well, yeah, I can cop to one, I guess, and I talk about this in the book as well. The importance of taking care of your health
Yeah.
so that you can take good care of your community. And I broke my own rule in the sense that I was going through a very stressful period. I wasn't taking good care of my health earlier in the year. And there was a situation in one of the communities I was dealing with. And rather than um, being more rational and level-headed about it, I reacted extremely quick in banning an individual, as opposed to giving a warning and kind of talking it through. I just was like I'm just having a crap go at it, and I banned them. It caused a bit of an issue, but thankfully I was able to resolve it, and we were able to kind of work through it. But it was just another reminder, and that's why that chapter was at the end as well, because it's the last thing I want people to think about is health and its importance, because you cannot manage and take good care of community if you don't take good care of yourself. And that's the thing. My mind wasn't in the right spot, and I wasn't making um, clear and well balanced decisions because I wasn't well centered. And
Yeah.
I think, with reflection, if I had taken better care of myself, I wouldn't have had the initial reaction that I did because it wasn't really worthy of banning someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say that a large majority of my December is me taking time to kind of recognize the same thing because in my own business, Socially Constructed is now almost a year old. Like I started in January of this year. Um, Recognizing a lot of those failings has kind of felt really emotionally difficult. So I think taking some time to step back from the community I'm trying to build because I feel like I lost the thread and just be with myself and say, okay, not a big deal. What are we going to do moving forward? So, what do you think is one thing that you want to spend December kind of existing with? What is one thing that you want to think about?
Well, I'm going to be completely disconnected. I mean, I'm as of the 15th or 16th, I think it's my last day of work. I'm going to pretty much be unplugged and very hard to get a hold of digitally. Um, I know, and it's really sad to say, but not spending all this time on, like, I basically have essentially stopped being on Twitter has made me feel so good. I don't know. I mean, um, I, but in general, on social media, I haven't really, I mean, except for LinkedIn, I'm not really partaking. I mean, I am on Mastodon, but very casually.
Yeah.
Um, but December for me is really about connecting and spending the time with my family, and um, we've we've had a lot of tough years, and so being able to fill that up with family and time to kind of really enjoy it and savor it is really important to me more than ever. And there's reminders everywhere about the importance of family and loved ones. And um, I found even some of the travel that I did this year to, in the past it was kind of like, oh, whatever, like I'll be back here again next year,
Yeah.
or as the show's a regular. It was like, no, I actually want to spend the time and really connect and talk and get to see people. So December is going to be just a really special time just to reconnect, ground myself, and get ready for 2023. We have a lot of work to do, and I'm really excited by it, and a lot of little projects that I can't wait for people to see and hear.
Yeah. Do you have any big goals for 2023 as you go into January?
None that I can share,
Sounds good. Fair
but
enough.
there, keep watching. There's going to be stuff coming.
Absolutely. So I guess that'll close us out. Where can we keep watching? Where can we follow you? And this is also a good chance to plug the book.
So you can go to adrianspeyer.com. It's my website, and I have the link to a newsletter which I keep people up to date on the goings on with the book. It also has a link to to buy the book that you can get that they're all fine bookstores. So you can Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Apple Books, Kindle. Um, I'm also running a special with Jenny Weigel on her community favorite things. Special discount for the ebook if people want to, get a Christmas gift or a holiday gift for their loved ones. Um, and yeah, and I'm very thankful for you having me here and connecting. I'm always happy to chat about the book and connect with fellow community builders. And it's just been my dream come true that people are buying this book and it's having an impact. And that to me is probably what I'm going to reflect on because as you mentioned, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. So I don't think I've fully had a chance to kind of let that sink in. How many kind words have been said about the book, and um, I appreciate everyone leaving reviews and helping more people know about the book because we're entering, this phase that's natural of a book, right? Like anyone that wanted to buy the book kind of bought it. At this point, it's the sales have slowed down, and it's but I want as much as possible this book to get in the hands of folks that need it. So I appreciate everyone helping and getting the word out about it.
Absolutely, definitely. Well, thank you so much. And Pat, if you're still watching, sorry, we are not going to be restarting at the top of the hour. But I do want to let everyone know that we are going to have a video recording available on the Socially Constructed Online YouTube channel. And it'll also be a part of the playlist that includes a ton of other amazing conversations and discussions that Adrian has had with the Community Hour with Blake and Deb Shell over at the Community Podcast, CMX and Community Manager Live, Common Room. You've been kind of all over the place. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's the community of community builders. They've been very kind in letting me into their spaces, and there's a couple more that'll be in January. I haven't sought it out. People have just been very kind to chat with me about the book, and I really appreciate it in that sense because it's a really, I mean, I think it comes through. I mean, what I appreciate is you have the Diet Book Club and people have gone through it, and you can tell this book really mattered to me. I look at it like this is like my one shot to get it all out there. I didn't leave anything on the, I got to the end of the book basically. It's out. Like I didn't have anything left to say essentially.
yeah.
But I've actually since realized I probably have enough of me to do another book. But if that never happens, this will be the tome, right? That ends out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us for Socially Constructed Online. I gotta say, it's been an absolute privilege to follow you like a roadie across the internet as I go through to like ask questions. For those who are just joining us, this is for the Accidental Community Manager. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and do a video outro real quick. Thank you so much, Adrian, for this interview. And thank you so much to everyone who participated in the Information Diet Book Club. Again, this is going to be the last book that we're covering for December, but we definitely went out with a bang. This particular video, if you're joining us live, is going to show up in January because I do plan on taking the holidays off. But we also plan on getting started in around mid-January with another book and an amazing review of the 7 books. We went through 7 books this year, is also going to come along with that. So if you're interested in more, be sure to subscribe and ring that bell in order to get more information. Check out Adrian's book review. The Accidental Community Manager is going to be covered in January as a standard book review. And if you would like to join the Information Diet Book Club, where we actually read through these and provide our takeaways chapter by chapter, join us in the community Discord where we're having this wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Adrian, for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day. And yeah, I hope that the holidays are very restorative for you.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
And uh-oh. Oh, right. I end the stream. New tool. I am supposed to stop it.